Hello everyone, I'm Annabelle and I'm a project manager here at Concerts Austria. And we have a very special guest here with us today, Alma Deutscher. Welcome, it's such a pleasure to have you here today with us.
It's such a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. For the audience, Alma Deutscher is one of the most inspiring young artists of her generation, and she is not only a composer, a conductor, but also a musician herself. But before we dive into it, maybe Alma, you can tell us a little bit more about yourself and about your musical journey.
Well, I'm a composer and a conductor and a pianist and a violinist, and I live in Vienna at the moment. I moved to Vienna when I was 12, and that's what actually inspired me to write the Waltz of the Sirens, which is the piece that will be played by all these youth orchestras, which is so exciting. And I was inspired by the police siren when I came to Vienna, and I thought, well, the city is the most musical city ever. Even the police siren sounds like a motif. So I was inspired by that to try and turn that police siren into a waltz, and also to take the wailing sirens of also that one hears in America and try to turn that into a waltz.
Yes, that's such an interesting story. And since you already mentioned this piece, Alma will be a special guest at our Summa Cum Laude Festival next year, where you will be taking on a lot of roles. You will be, well, first of all, your piece will be one of the compulsory pieces for the orchestras. You will be a workshop lecturer, a jury member, and you will also conduct. How does it feel to take on so many different roles at the festival?
Well, I'm so excited that so many youth orchestras will play my sirens. As you know, it's always been a dream of mine to reach people my own age, and to hear this, played by, to hear how different young people interpret my piece is going to be so exciting. I really, really can't wait. And of course, to be in the jury, and also to conduct then myself with a youth orchestra, a concert. It's so exciting for me. It's really has always been one of my dreams to reach young people. And especially this piece, the Siren Sounds, I know appeals very much to young people, because on social media, even on TikTok, people were amazed by it. And, I was very moved when I saw comments by people who obviously never went to classical concerts, but they were talking about the transition between the noise, the sirens in the beginning, to gradually turn into beauty and tonality, and how that touched them.
Yes, yeah.
So I'm really, really excited.
I'm also very excited to hear the different ensembles play your piece, and I was actually listening to it yesterday again, and also, I think it was at Carnegie Hall where you talked a little bit about it before, and you were saying, don't be scared. And I think it's so amazing how you turn something that is generally associated with something negative or ugly or even scary, and you turned it around and made something so beautiful out of it. So I think that's very special, and I can imagine that it speaks to a lot of young people too.
I hope so. It's always a theme with me to try and find, even in the harshest, ugliest sounds in the world around me, to try and find beauty in them.
Yes, I think that very differentiates you. And since you mentioned that you love to reach young people with your music, how was that for you growing up? Because you've achieved a lot of attention from a very young age, and you've often been called a prodigy. How do you see that term? Do you feel like it kind of puts you in a box, or puts a lot of pressure on you, or how do you?
I actually hated being called a prodigy always, and no, ever since I was a small child, I wanted to be taken seriously. I wanted always to be as good as the adults, and I hated being called a prodigy or a wunderkind, and now anyway, I'm too old for that, so that's a very nice thing. And also now as a conductor, it's a different position, it's a different world, and I was very happy about that, because there was quite a struggle, especially when I was young and I was performing, or I was working with musicians much older than me. And in the beginning, often they would think, why do we have to play with this small child? And they were very skeptical. But normally when they met me and they played my music, and they liked the music, and then they started realizing, okay, this is something.
Okay, yes. Yes, because it is not that often that big orchestras play pieces by such young composers. So, yes, but I can imagine that it also kind of is a relief now that you've grown older, and maybe, I mean, it's sad, but maybe people don't label you, or they just see you as a composer.
As the artist,
yes,
rather than...
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
And also as a conductor, of course, you're in a position of authority.
Yes.
So,
of course. Yes.
And you need to have a very clear idea of how you want the music to sound. That's also why I love working with musicians so much, because I love trying to find the sound that I imagined in my head, and really inspire the musicians and bring them with me on a journey.
Yes, that's
and find exactly the sound and the interpretation.
And do you feel like being a musician and a conductor too, does it influence your work as a composer? Does it make it easier maybe? Because
being a
you
composer
have
and a conductor.
different perspectives.
So as a composer, I started when I was 4. And as a conductor, I started only when I was 16, because I wanted to conduct my own music, because I'd worked with many wonderful conductors. And at some point, though, I realized that if I wanted to hear exactly the interpretation that I had imagined and exactly the sound, then of course I would have to learn to conduct it myself. I couldn't expect anyone else to have exactly my interpretation. And so I did, and it was a really wonderful choice, I think, because I love the direct contact with the musicians, and I love, especially if it's a world premiere, or especially with my music, to really, really try and get the sound that I had in my head. And also, I learn a lot as a composer from conducting, because of the direct contact with the musicians, as an orchestrator also.
Yes, I can imagine that, especially since you mentioned you have a clear imagination of how you want this piece to be, and even though another conductor can get really close to your imagination.
And sometimes it's different. Sometimes I really like the interpretation. Sometimes I learn also, and I wouldn't have thought of that myself. But I just also wanted to have the option of hearing it exactly as I'd imagined. So.
Yes, yeah. And how did it all start? I mean, you were very young. Maybe you don't even remember. But how did you discover your talent? Or was it someone who saw you and was like...
Well, my family love music. They're not professional, but I heard music even when I was in my mother's tummy, apparently. And we had a small piano, and I started playing the piano when I was 2, but just with one finger. And I got the violin as a birthday present for my 3rd birthday. I remember that moment actually being so excited, and everyone thought it was going to be a toy, and you know, I'd play with it for a bit and throw it away, but I was so excited, and I kept on trying to play it, that at some point my parents thought, well, why not find her a teacher? And when I was 4, I think I just sat at the piano and improvised, and I played music. I called it Songs from Transylvanian, which was my imaginary country. And I think my parents thought that I was just trying to play something that I'd heard, and I wasn't quite remembering it right, because they didn't recognize it. And I kept on saying, no, it's mine. And when I was 5, I started also learning to write music, and I also started with this wonderful Italian system called patimenti, which is where all the great Italian composers learned with that system, up to Puccini. So there's a bass where you improvise the harmony and the melody on top, and it starts very simple, and then it becomes more and more complicated, sophisticated, until you're improvising fugues. And it's an amazing system for learning harmony, and also for children, because it's fun. There's nothing. You're not analyzing something. You're playing. You're improvising each time.
That's very interesting. Yes.
So that's how I started, and then I just continued composing more and more.
And do you feel like you have developed a kind of unique or your own style of composing? And if so, has it changed a lot over time, or?
My style has definitely changed over time, and of course it also depends on what has inspired me the last, and what has made the deepest impact. But I always say that lots of people, especially nowadays, put a lot of importance on developing a unique style, on discovering your new voice and having a completely original style that is not similar to anybody else. And I always say that this is a little bit misleading, because there's nothing that is not similar to anything else. You're always inspired by something. And I actually made a YouTube video about that, showing examples from the greatest composers, what inspired them for this melody, and where they actually even stole a melody and then made it their own with their own touch. So, and the problem is that if people get too boggled down about inventing a completely new style, then in the end they can't compose anything. And also it just becomes noise, and also noise sounds similar to other noise. So it's not new. So I try not to get too stuck on that, but to instead try and be inspired by the traditions of the past, and then to do something new with that. But of course I try to all the time to put my own signature touches in the harmonic world, and of course my style is developing all the time.
And who has been someone who really inspired you, or your favorite composer who you always take inspiration from?
Well, my favorite composer, that's such a hard question, because I could list so many if I just say one. Schubert is a composer that I have a very, very strong connection to, and I love very much. I grew up with the Viennese music. I grew up with the music of Mozart. It was my mother tongue. But I could give you a list, but it's probably not. There's so many. But I was studying the orchestration of Richard Strauss in the last years quite a lot. So that was quite an inspiration.
Yes, that's also very relevant this year.
Yes, well, Johann Strauss, yes. Sorry. But also, of course, that's also very much since coming to Vienna, I've been completely in waltz mode. Yes. And I just love his waltzes so much, and I conduct them also so often, and they were such an inspiration for my waltzes. Yes. Especially the introductions. I'm amazed at how clever and beautiful and exciting the introductions to his waltzes are.
And you're also composing operas.
Yes.
You have already 3 operas.
I have 3 operas, yes actually.
The last one, The Emperor's...
The Emperor's New Waltz. Yes.
The Emperor's New Waltz. It premiered in Salzburg, right?
Yes.
2 years ago.
Yes.
Are you planning on working on new operas in the future?
Well, I'm working on a musical at the moment, and that's actually loosely based on that opera, because I wanted to write a musical already then. I actually didn't want to write another opera, but I was commissioned to write an opera, so it ended up being something in between. And now I'm working to adapt it to a musical, and it's still in early stages, but yes, that's something that I always wanted to do. So.
And what inspired you to write operas? Do you have a special connection to operas?
I watched operas ever since I was a small child. I remember a very important experience for me was when I was 3. I went to the Salzburg Festival with my parents, and we saw The Magic Flute. And it was the most beautiful production. I still remember Pamina had a wonderful orange dress, and it was an amazing production, and it really imprinted itself on my mind. And I became obsessed with opera, especially The Magic Flute. Then I rewatched The Magic Flute on DVD at home, and dressed up as the Queen of the Night, and hid in the cupboard when Papageno was about to hang himself. And I just completely fell in love with opera from that moment on. So it was the most natural thing for me to want to compose my own opera. And when I was 8, I composed my first short opera, The Swoop of Dreams, which was just about 15 minutes. But then my dream was always to compose a full-length opera. So, and then I started composing Cinderella.
And how was the feeling of seeing Cinderella for the first time in the full production on stage?
Well, Cinderella was first of all performed when I was 10 as a chamber version in Israel, and then a year afterwards in Vienna, and I reworked it, and made it longer and orchestrated it. And then a year after that in California, in San Jose, then on the most lavish production with choir, big orchestra, and the most amazing costumes. So in each stage, it was amazing seeing it come to life. And now it's been performed many times. I haven't always been there, but it's so exciting to see it come to life. I conducted it in California then also, and actually just a month ago, I was in Virginia conducting it with young people. So that was also really, really, really sweet and wonderful to work with really young people singing and performing it.
And you already mentioned a few places where you performed. It seems like you really have a very international career already. What was your favorite place to perform, or your favorite city or country?
That's a hard question. I mean, of course, Carnegie Hall was incredibly special. I mean, that was just so exciting. It was quite a stressful concert because it was live streamed and it was sold out and it was all my music, but it was incredibly exciting. I remember I had so much fun. And of course, seeing Cinderella come to life each time was one of the most amazing feelings. It's like you have this child in your mind and you see it suddenly growing and turning to life on the stage right in front of your eyes.
Yes, I can't even imagine what wonderful feeling that must be. And do you feel like seeing Cinderella for the first time come on the full version, was that a wow moment for you where you had the feeling, I really made it?
I think for me personally, yes, because that was my childhood's dream, to have my opera put on stage. My dream was really just to have my opera on stage with orchestra, and it was just the most amazing production. So I think I was just completely blown away. It was the most amazing feeling. And of course, it's a very satisfactory feeling now to conduct my own pieces. That's for me personally very, very fulfilling. And generally to compose and to have my music performed, because if I was just composing for the draw, I don't think I would have so much motivation. First of all, I love performing myself. I love being on stage, and I love bringing my music to an audience. I think the audience is very important for me.
Going back to the SCL Festival a little bit, because you are also having such an international career, and we at the festival are we are a global festival, and we have participants from really all over the world, and it is very important for us to emphasize this at the festival. And so we're happy to have different jury members and different lecturers every year. And our festival actually goes probably to Shanghai in 2027. And I've read that you have also performed in China a few times before.
Yes.
How was that experience for you? How were the audiences?
I love performing there.
Yes.
I remember I improvised then at the end of the concert. So I performed with some orchestras and also gave some recitals. And then I remember improvising from notes it's something that I like doing in concerts, that the audience gives me notes and I then improvise a piece based on the notes. And I remember so many children coming up on the stage to give me notes, and it was a really very, very, very enthusiastic audience.
I imagine that must be an amazing feeling when you can really connect with the audience.
Absolutely, and then they see a piece being created on the spot.
Yeah.
So yes, but that would be amazing. I would.
Yes, and actually, we would implement some elements of that already in next year's festival, where you will also be joining us. Would you, for example, be open to also conduct one of the Chinese ensembles if they come?
I'd love to.
Yes,
I'd love to.
Because absolutely. I think they will really appreciate it too. And especially at the SCL Festival, these are very young people. and them seeing you, who is a big inspiration for them, because I mean you are also very young, and if they see what you do and see what you have already achieved, I believe that is very inspiring for them.
I would love to, and that's what I just said. It's also very inspiring for me to work with people
Yes.
my age or people, because I love working with adults and I've learned so much, but it's also so wonderful to work with people my own age and reach them, with my music. It's always been a dream of mine.
Yeah. Do you have maybe any advice for young people who are trying to follow your path but are maybe a little scared or lost?
Well, for composers, for people who want to be composers, first of all, I'd say don't be scared of trying to create something beautiful, because so many people are, and one just has to try. It's much easier to create something ugly. I know, because but to create something beautiful is actually very hard. But I think something that we've lost in our generation today is the striving for beauty, and that is also why classical music is. There's a danger that it could become less relevant and become a niche. I think that could really bring classical music to a wider audience. Yeah. And also, of course, so I want to start a school at some point, a composing school, where I will teach harmony in the same way that I learned harmony. Because I always think there must be so many talented people in the world. Actually, I know many very talented composers who are really talented, but they're just lacking the tools. They need the skills, the tools. And you can be a genius, but if you can't modulate, then you're not going to be able to create something on a high level. So, but to study score, I mean, I studied learned from the great masters. And for performers, for violinists and pianists, something I always say is it's very important to also enjoy yourself when playing, and to convey a message to the audience and to move them in some way. It doesn't need to be perfect. That's what I always told myself, and that's why I was never nervous before performing, because I knew it didn't matter if it was not completely perfect. The important thing was that I enjoyed myself, and I made the audience enjoy themselves. I moved them, or in some way I touched them, and that was what I wanted to achieve, not perfection.
Yes, and I think it makes such a big difference, because the audience can really feel if you are having fun.
Exactly,
if you
and they
enjoy,
also have fun. Yes.
Exactly, then even if you do a little mistake, no one will notice.
It's not about that.
Yes.
That's
a very good advice, because I think many people struggle with stage fright.
Yes.
And they feel like they want to perform, but they held themselves back because,
because of that. But
that's the whole point, to just enjoy it.
To enjoy it, and the audience will enjoy it also.
Yes, it's very nice. Well, thank you for
it's a
this
pleasure.
Really nice talk, and we will see you at the SCL Festival next year.
I can't
and we're
wait.
really excited. Thank you.
Thank you so much.